So typically when we're spending money on marketing to try and drive new patients, they don't know your phone number, so they're not going to have any idea of that. So at least being able to put the number in the places that you're paying money for would be a good way to kind of start that process. But that would be one of the objections that we come across is changing and displaying a new phone number.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day and dealing with the current situation with Google reviews. As I'm recording this with you, or as I'm recording this episode, dentists, or every business for that matter, has been basically seeing their Google review count dropping significantly. But for those that are not aware, when this records and they haven't heard about it, this is a Google glitch, and they are basically looking to get it fixed. Nobody has actually lost any reviews. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. This is going to be released in March. So hopefully the problem is fixed at this point, but just wanted to update everybody on that. I also want to remind everybody about our sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their continued support, allowing me to come to your inbox every single week. The last thing I want to mention is about my Supercharge Your Dental Practice event in September 26th and 27th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at the Pier 66 Resort, 5 miles from Fort Lauderdale Airport. You can find out for more information at superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and save $100 with the code RAVING, R-A-V-I-N-G. Today's episode is called All Things Marketing, Call Tracking, and CallRail. My guest is Nick Jascomb from CallRail. And Nick is the sales manager. He has been there almost 6 years, and he moved from scheduling demos to running them and helping customers set up their CallRail account. He now manages a team of reps that do the same, and he helps provide the best possible customer experience for people who are using CallRail. So I was a CallRail user during my dental career. It was one of the many ways I used to track my marketing campaigns. So I think that those who are doing marketing and are not tracking it, I think they'll definitely want to listen to this episode to learn more about how you can easily and simply track the results that you're getting from your marketing campaign. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Nick Jascomb. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Len. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to get this information out. As I mentioned, I was a CallRail user amongst other types of call tracking I did. I think it's one of the most important things that a dentist can do in their practice, because otherwise you have no idea whether your marketing is actually working for you. And that's a problem. When I talk to dentists, a lot of times, even when they track it, they don't know, okay? So they have to track it and use the tracking that's available. So just to start with, can you let people know who are listening and viewing this, can you let them know what CallRail is and how it helps dental practices?
Of course. Yeah, thanks for that. So kind of something that you just talked about is one thing that we hear oftentimes. Dentists are running marketing campaigns, but they don't know exactly what's working. So they want to get some tracking in place. Oftentimes you're spending money on marketing. Knowing how that's coming back to you or not is going to be pretty beneficial in helping grow the practice and making sure that you're not wasting any money, right? So CallRail essentially is a lead tracking and optimization platform. What we do at a high level is help dentists create unique tracking phone numbers, and those are just a phone number that forwards over to their main business line. The reason we do this is you can create tracking numbers and put them in the places that you're going to be marketing your dental practice. So for example, I have one on my Google My Business profile, something you were just talking about. Maybe I'm running a print campaign, or I have some search ads out there, and I want to be able to track how many people are calling these, and a little bit further, what's happening in those conversations, which ones are leading to potentially appointments or higher value services. Ultimately, so these practices have a good understanding of what's happening and what's working. They can replicate that and pull back away from what's not to make sure that they're not only giving the best experience, but optimizing those dollars to give as much care to these patients as they can.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. So, one of the things that I have never really been a proponent of, and it's really because of the space I'm in where I help practices with reviews and ranking. One of the issues that I found, especially when they're using marketing companies. So, by the way, just to confirm and make everybody know this, there's two ways to get CallRail. One way is to go through an agency, a channel partner who provides CallRail as a service. The other option is to reach out to Nick's team at CallRail and use their service directly through CallRail, right, Nick? There's two ways to use the service.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So generally, or in the past, when practices are not even using just CallRail, any tracking number, okay, one of the things that really messes up is it messes up the name, address, and phone number sync, which is important for ranking. So I'm curious and again, let's talk about the direct option at this point, not through a channel partner. The direct option is literally adding a tracking number to the marketing, which then the patients call, and they're basically then going to be told, hey, this call may be recorded for quality assurance, I'm assuming, and then the call is recorded and the team or the doctor can listen to it. So in this case, when you put a call tracking number on your Google My Business page, is there anything being done to the name, address, and phone number sync? Because that you don't want that mismatch if you're using a tracking number. I've always been a proponent of putting it on the website because honestly, the goal of marketing is to get people to go to your website. That's your basically your marketing hub. Okay. Yep. Anybody who looks you up online. Okay. I'm referred to Mark Jones, Dr. Mark Jones, and I refer my friend or I'm referred to him. I Google the business. Okay. When I Google the business, the first thing I'm going to do is going to call that number in the Google My Business page. Yeah. That is a tracking number. And if they ever turn off the tracking, which companies do, that number is disconnected and that person may put that in the phone. Now, how do I know that? Because it's happened to me. That's how I know that's happened. So I'm curious, because you brought up Google My Business, how do you handle that? Or what are your suggestions about handling that specific thing?
Great question, and that's definitely a concern that we've come across. The way that we track calls from Google My Business, and we've confirmed this with Google to not affect that name, address, phone number consistency, is by showing the call tracking number in the primary slot, so the one that's actually displayed if somebody does search locally for the practice. However, we're going to keep the existing phone number in that secondary slots. They actually allow you to add more than one phone number, and keeping that original number in there adheres to that NAP consistency and ensures that you're not getting dinged for anything from an SEO perspective.
That's really good information because that's the first time I've heard of that. How about, you mentioned Google My Business. How about do you put the same number then on the website? Do you put, where are most businesses putting tracking numbers to track it? Obviously, if they do a marketing campaign, they can put the number there as well. But online, where are you seeing companies use different tracking numbers, or is it the same tracking number used in multiple places?
So it's definitely going to be a different tracking number used in those places. And that's how we measure how many calls come in out of these different sources. We put one number on a print campaign. We don't put that number anywhere else. If somebody calls it, they must have come from the print campaign. To the question of, what are people usually doing? Website is going to be the biggest thing, right? So we put call tracking on their website so that they can understand where people are coming from before they're getting there, what pages they're landing on before they're calling, what they're looking at and things like that. So website is definitely going to be the big one. Google My Business would probably be next. If anybody is running paid search marketing, Google Ads number is typically what comes in next. We can start providing which campaigns and which paid search keywords the dentist is bidding on so that they know, within that paid search what's happening best. And then social media would probably be next. Maybe something like Facebook, either ads that they're running or boosted posts to help with organic reach in that aspect. That's what we see often.
Got it. No, that makes sense. So I think this is a pretty understood concept, but why do you think call tracking is a needed aspect? Why do you think it's beneficial to the business? And where do you, and if I have to re-ask the question, I will, but why don't businesses or why don't dentists move forward, basically, in your opinion, when they reach out to a company and decide, I don't want to spend the money to do this? So why is it beneficial? Why are you seeing doctors don't do it? And why is it important?
Why is it beneficial? I think it's because if you're not tracking it, it's kind of hard to know what's performing, right? Yeah, we can ask patients how they found out about us, but that's probably not going to be the most accurate information, especially if we're spending upwards of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month on marketing. So being able to track it is really the way to understand what's happening instead of asking people. And if you have that information, you know exactly where to allocate that funding. If not, we hear things like we're flying blind. We don't know for sure if this campaign is producing for us. Or, hey, we put money into paid marketing in the past, but we couldn't really verify if it was giving us anything. So we kind of pared back from that. Now, if your practice is doing well off referrals, word of mouth, and business is great, then hey, that's awesome. But that's not always going to be the case. Maybe sometimes things shrink down a little bit, and being able to pull that marketing arm is going to help get additional patients in that may not have otherwise spoken with you, and help drive some growth in the practice. Without knowing exactly where people are finding you, it makes it pretty hard to generate that type of engagement.
Got it. No, that makes sense to me. So let me ask you another question about these tracking numbers. What do you think, or you mentioned some places that they can put them on, and you mentioned places like Google My Business, website, social media, paid advertising. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they can simply put it on their Google My Business listing. Like, where do you see most doing it? What is the average what do you find the average practice is doing in terms of the number of tracking numbers they're using? If you have multiple tracking numbers, I'm assuming there's one dashboard where you see all of that information displayed and you can check it by tracking number. But I want to make sure that the people listening and viewing understand how easy this is to implement and actually start seeing results and know where you're getting the ROI from, so you can put more fuel on that fire and take a step back from the stuff that isn't working.
Yeah, sorry, there was a lot there. So as far as rephrase the beginning of the question, I'm sorry.
So if somebody was starting with just one tracking number, you're either putting that on your Google My Business listing or your website. That I think is the only way you would do that.
And then how easy is
it is if you have as you add tracking numbers, okay, how easy it is that within the platform to track things. Because again, I know so many practices that use tracking numbers, and when I ask the doctors, do they actually use it or listen to them, they don't even have time to listen to them. So really the tracking is going to waste, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'd say on average, most dental practices, if they're running one location, is probably 10 to 15 phone numbers, depending on how much marketing they're running. So nothing too crazy. To your point, we do have a dashboard that they can log into to see all of these calls in real time, to create and change phone numbers that have been established already, listen to recordings, even look at transcriptions or summaries of phone calls to help save time, because to your point, nobody has the time to look into all of this. As far as how easy it is, it's actually one of the great things about CallRail. Most of the time, we can get a dental practice set up in about 30 minutes. We create some phone numbers within the platform. They need to take those numbers and ultimately make them patient-facing and change them in those other places. But we can get that set up pretty easily. We can integrate it with other ad platforms that they're utilizing, like Google, Meta, Google My Business, things like that. And then there's another AI component that we can help set up very easily to save additional time and create more efficiencies as far as reviewing calls and understanding maybe gaps in training. So getting a recording of the call is great, but then a transcription makes it a little bit quicker, a summary even easier to read. And then what a lot of our dental practices are doing is classifying calls to help better with reporting, right? So we can say, hey, Nick called in on Monday at 12 o'clock, but he was also asking about, a potential implant versus just a cavity. And he asked about scheduling an appointment, right? So now we have CallRail telling us all of this from one phone call without having to go in and listen to everything, without having to dig that out. And then we can see, hey, Google My Business, social media, how many of these opportunities did we get? And then how many of them led to those types of behaviors that we're looking for? So very easy to get set up. We actually help throughout the whole process, and we have a 14-day free trial available so that anybody can really see it to believe it.
That's really good, and we'll talk about that, obviously, the pricing and the trials towards the end. I want to run through like a scenario, what happens when someone uses these tracking numbers from the patient side of things and then the practice side of things. Sure. So let's just go on the assumption that there's a Google My Business tracking number there from CallRail. So somebody calls the office, and am I correct, there is a message alerting the person to the fact that the call may be recorded to some extent, right? That's a requirement. You need to do that. Okay.
It's customizable. It depends on the laws in the state. But yes, we can easily play that to the caller and make that in place.
And then how about on the doctor side or the practice side? Can they get a whisper greeting? Do you have a whisper greeting capability that tells the practice, this call is from Google My Business, or this call is from a magazine or a postcard?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So a whisper message would tell the person answering the call where the call is coming from. So if we need to tailor that message or be prepared to speak to that lead in a different way than we may other potential patients, they can have that information available.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of whisper greetings. Not everyone does that, but it was a big thing when I was doing it. So the person picking up the phone knows this is in most cases, a paid lead that the practice paid money to, and you have to handle that with kids' gloves on. So,
Yep.
So then obviously they go through the call. The call is recorded, and then when the call is ended, does the practice have the capabilities to get a email or a notification from CallRail that a call was recorded for them to go listen to? What is the practice side then see?
Yeah, so practice can get an email notification that the call came through. They would click a link in there and go to what we call a timeline, and that's going to have any interactions that they've had with that particular caller or that possible patient, so that they can reference those calls, listen to those recordings, see what marketing source they came from, etc.
Got it. You obviously, through the channel side and the direct side, do you have an idea how many dental practices are using CallRail?
Dental alone, we had a meeting recently. I want to say it was over 3,000 dental practices that are using CallRail.
So you have a very large number of dentists using the platform. So can you discuss some of the common trends that you're seeing in the dental industry, because you have a lot of clients using it?
Yeah, for sure. I would say in dental, we're definitely seeing from a marketing standpoint, usually a mix of paid and organic traffic. Obviously, that local presence is big with organic, but then probably some competitors are doing some paid marketing as well. So need to get a footprint in there. I definitely would say, local with Google My Business is going to be big. Social media, we're hearing a lot of Meta, whether that's Facebook or Instagram. Print is still big in the dental industry, whether it's flyers that are being sent out or publications that are local to the community. And referrals are obviously big in the medical space, and particularly the dental space as well. So we're seeing a lot of that. As far as strategies and tips, I mean, definitely putting some sort of lead tracking in place. Like we talked about it, if you're not tracking this, you're spending money, you're kind of flying blind. As long as the dollars all check out, it makes sense, but are we truly optimizing that and really getting the most that we can out of it? Probably not. So being able to measure what's happening to produce that ROI, whether people are calling, whether they're going to the website and filling out any sort of contact us or new patient form, or even if they're texting us. CallRail can handle texting as well. We know that's becoming a lot bigger in the healthcare industry, and we want to give everybody, the easiest way to communicate with these patients, and the patients the easiest way to communicate with these potential practices. Outside of just tracking the call itself and knowing where it came from, I always say that's kind of half the battle, right? Knowing where it came from is big, but then you also want to know what happened on that phone call. How did our front desk staff handle it? Did they really try to get that appointment? Did they push to get that reschedule? Did they let that cancellation just kind of walk out the door? Did we really try to get something out of that, right? Understanding gaps in training as well. And then again, the actions that you're looking for out of people calling. So, appointments, higher value services, being able to denote which places those are coming from. Again, just makes it a lot easier to replicate success and pull away from anything that's not really working. And then a lot of dental practices, whether it's owners, practice managers, they'll come in and review the CallRail data weekly or daily, so that they can keep tabs on everything and really make sure it's all optimized based on the data that they have. If you don't have the data, if you don't have the information, it's hard to make decisions, right? So we help give practices the information that they need to give the best care, get the most patients in as possible, and ultimately drive the most revenue.
Got it. And I want to just confirm, because I think the answer is everybody, but there is not a single business that's not a candidate for CallRail. You don't need anything special. You don't need special equipment. Correct. As long as you have an actual phone number and a phone that you can answer, you can track. And it could also be for cell phones as too, correct? If you only have a cell phone number, you can use it as well.
Yeah, we can send the call to a cell phone, the main business line. We can get a little bit more robust there if you want to put callers through a schedule and maybe have after hours calls go to an answering service. But yeah, that's exactly right. I've always boiled it down to, if somebody has to call you to become, I say a customer, but in this line, it would obviously be a patient. If somebody has to call you to do business with you, then call tracking is definitely a need. They call you as that first kind of touch point, knowing where that call came from and being able to try to replicate that that's the name of the game.
Got it. And what is the reason why, and maybe you would probably know this because you ran demos yourself, what is the objection that somebody would have when they reach out to CallRail to see if they want to use their services? Why would a dentist say no? I mean, we haven't talked about cost, but from what I remember, it's not very costly either. But can you talk about some of the objections that you hear and how you kind of overcome those?
Yeah. So one objection that we come across is something that you referred to a little bit earlier, and that's sometimes people aren't willing to want to change the number that is displayed for them, right? Maybe I'm an established practice. I've got 10 or 15 years of tenure here. I don't want to go and change the numbers in these different places, which is totally fine. But to what we were talking about earlier, if we're not using a different number, the most we can do is ask that person how they found you. It's just not going to be very accurate. So typically when we're spending money on marketing to try and drive new patients, they don't know your phone number, so they're not going to have any idea of that. So at least being able to put the number in the places that you're paying money for would be a good way to kind of start that process. But that would be one of the objections that we come across is changing and displaying a new phone number.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. So one of the big things nowadays in the world, in my opinion, is AI. Artificial intelligence is taking over everything. It's incredible. I was just at a meeting this past weekend, and the amount of new tools that are AI focused are incredible, especially obviously in the dental industry. Yeah. So can you talk about what type of role AI plays now and what you see it as a future in marketing?
I think, yeah, AI is playing a big role right now. I think it does a lot of things. It can look in kind of be bucketed into some different objectives. But AI is definitely not going away, right? It can be used pretty heavily in the call tracking industry, and I think a lot of other industries as well. As far as what we're doing with AI, it's really just making it easier and quicker to evaluate what's happening on these phone calls. When I started at CallRail about 6 years ago, everybody wanted to record their calls, which was great. But nobody had time to go in there and listen to a bunch of recordings, especially if your call volume was high. So we're leveraging AI to put that recording through a tool that generates a readable transcript, a lot quicker there, and as well as a summary of that phone call. We're also going to pull out how they may have found you if it was different than that source that the phone number was tied to. So, hey, I was a referral. That's going to be pointed out as well. We're also surfacing, trends and highlights of conversations that people aren't necessarily listening for. So maybe common objections, common questions that we're getting, FAQs and things that can help with the website or maybe the search, or the marketing that we're doing in these campaigns. And then we have, maybe some other things at the forefront as well. Talking about potentially using AI to, do things like answering calls and things like that. That's where I think will be kind of the next step, is maybe if a dental practice isn't available to answer a call, it goes to some sort of an AI agent that can maybe listen, take some information, and then get that back to the practice, so that hopefully that caller doesn't go down to the next provider in their Google list or whatever that they're searching to try and find help for that toothache or whatever else they have going on.
Got it. So we haven't discussed cost yet, and I think cost is really important. So I have a couple of questions on that as well. So can you just briefly give an idea? It doesn't have to be an exact price, because it may get cheaper if you get more lines, but I don't know the pricing policies there. Can you talk about pricing in terms of, hey, I want to get started. What does it normally cost to get a line up and running? I know you said it's very quick, 30 minutes, but can you talk about pricing revolving CallRail?
Yeah, sure. And I did want to point out one other thing that we're doing from an AI perspective, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So the other one is helping with the actual handling of the patient and converting them to become, an actual client of the practice. So using AI to generate a call coaching follow-up for the person that answered the call. So how can we help them better give the best customer experience? It's also going to provide them with follow-up and next steps. So if they need to remember what happened, we have that all available. And it's also going to draft like a follow-up email. So if they need to send something to that patient after the fact, or they want to have something that they can reference back to if maybe that patient didn't schedule an appointment, it just makes it easier to have all of that information at their fingertips, not have to go back and listen to a bunch of calls to hear that information.
Got it.
And then as far as pricing, the way that CallRail is priced is based on how many phone numbers we create and how many minutes worth of calls are going through those numbers each month. So call volume is going to play a factor into our pricing. And then we also offer HIPAA supportive plans. So most of the dental practices that we work with want to go on a HIPAA supportive plan to ensure that that patient data is protected. It's all being stored in regulation with those laws and HIPAA and high tech. So we've got those two options in there. If they're looking to do a HIPAA supportive plan, we can look at something around the lines of, obviously it would depend on usage, but just for some ballparking, as little as I'd say 150 a month, maybe up to about 250, and that would be with the HIPAA supportive option there. So that would be probably something to look at to start, and then depending on what products and things they need, it could potentially go higher than that.
Got it. And then and I don't know how much you know about some of the competitors that you have in the dental space. There are obviously a lot of competitors to CallRail. Can you talk about, again, just some of the differences between what CallRail does and some of the other companies that are available for call tracking, and why someone should consider using CallRail as an option?
I think CallRail truly makes it easy. We've got that 14-day free trial period to start everything out, so you can really see what it looks like. You don't have to commit to anything up front. We are a month-to-month platform, so there's no long-term agreement to sign. That being said, sometimes people are concerned about what would happen with their numbers. Numbers that are created in CallRail are owned by the business. They can be taken elsewhere, so you can still keep those numbers. To your anecdote a little bit earlier about that Google My Business line. Setup and support come included with our pricing. We have a support team located here in the United States, so they're available to help with anything ongoing, any issues. We also offer that setup and ongoing training. So I think just being very easy, very transparent pricing, support is very helpful when we need it. I think that would really be it. Those are the things that we hear versus some of the competitors.
Got it. Okay. That's really great information. So, Nick, is there anything that we haven't touched base on yet that you wanted to cover before we switch to my lightning round Q&A?
I don't think so. Just kind of why is it important? Dental practices want to attract more new patients, help grow the practice. To do that, we need to get more of those new patients to reach out, or more people to reach out about our services. And competitors are typically doing this. So being able to measure and kind of keep track of that alongside anybody who's around you doing the same thing is pretty valuable.
Got it. Okay, that's great. Great information. So I'm going to transition now to the lightning round Q&A. I'm going to ask you 8 to 10 questions. As I mentioned before we recorded, very fast answers on this one. We'll get through this, and then we'll get your contact information and tell people how they can reach out to CallRail for more information. Okay?
Great.
So let me pull up this deck here, and we'll do some random questions there. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? How does CallRail develop key partnerships with other companies or dentists?
I'd say through referrals through customers that already use us, and probably agencies and channels that utilize particularly dental clients. Okay.
What book do you think you should go back and reread as it's made a great impact on you the first time you read it?
The Challenger Sale.
Love that book. And that's a great book. I talk about that book all the time. In fact, because it's handling objections and knowing how to get people away from what they're asking. I've been told that I've never read. I read that book since then, but when I first heard about that book, people said I probably read that or wrote that book. That's how good I am with objection handling. That's amazing. If you have not read that book, you need to read that book. The Challenge Sale, amazing book, amazing
Great
book.
One.
Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Mondays, slow.
Okay, that's good. Monday's not supposed to be slow. Do you have a favorite podcast that you listen to?
I do not.
You don't listen to podcasts?
Not as much. I got the 2 kids at home, so I'm usually with them doing stuff.
Okay. What mindset have helped make you successful?
Growth mindset.
Okay. How many hours a day do you work on average?
8 to 9.
Okay. Regular work day. Who is one person you love to have as a mentor?
Lewis Hamilton.
The racing driver?
Yep.
Formula One?
Yep.
Got it. Okay. At least I knew who that person was. So this is a tricky question. A lot of people have struggled with this one. So what is the one thing that doesn't add value to your life, but you still do it?
The one thing that doesn't add value, but I still do it. Probably writing too many to-do lists. I have like 2 or 3 all over the place. And it's because I always think I'm going to forget something. So I'm always like double and tripling up on it.
Okay. What profession do you think is the most undervalued today?
Undervalued today? Ooh, let's go with teachers.
I've heard that a lot. So let's see. What did you want to be? What was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
An attorney.
Okay. Let's see. Last question here. Actually, last question I'm going to ask you. And this one, what is one subscription that you cannot live without? Business or personal?
Amazon Prime.
Most common answer I get. So really good job at answering those, Nick. Nick, tell people how they can reach out to find more about how to get started with CallRail, or if they want to learn more. We gave them a lot of information here, but they still want to learn more. What's the best way for them to get information?
Very easy. Go to callrail.com and either schedule a demo with us or start a free trial, and we'll reach out to get a conversation going and see if we can help.
Simple as that. Nick, I appreciate you joining me today. I appreciate CallRail reaching out to want to be a guest on the podcast. Always happy to promote companies within the dental industry. Guys, if you like the episode and think CallRail could be beneficial to what you're doing with marketing, reach out as Nick recommended. But like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, recommend the podcast to your friends and colleagues. Go on and review us. It helps as well. I want to remind everybody about our 2 sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites. Go check them out to learn more about how they can help your dental practice. Supercharge your dental practice September 26th and 27th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at Pier 66. Use the code RAVING to save $100 on the super early bird pricing, superchargeyourdentalpractice.com. And as I end every single one of our episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Nick, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thanks, Lynn. Have a great day.